Hi everyone, this is my work in progress presentation for IOL class. I will introduce my Studio 2 project and talk about the motion in my project, and I will discuss the related work and show some weekly experiments. Then I will talk more about reflections and plan in the next half of the semester. Relating to my studio project, I am exploring a sense of slow rhythm. The project is called Make Your Relaxation. I'm intending to use 2D animation to create relaxing animation piece to trigger people's aspect of relaxation in fast-paced city life. So considering the motion in my project, I am exploring the background motion with subtle movements in my LL class. My primary goal is to investigate how background things move to maintain a quiet atmosphere, and also to investigate how subtle movements maintain a slow pace in background. And also to investigate how sound can contribute to the background. So my weekly experiment is basically around building a sense of natural movements and human subtle movements. Before I jump in to talk about my weekly exercise, let me show some relative work first. So, the Doji Koji music videos from a studio in Korea is really a good reference here. The animations are simple in concept with a cute cartoon Koji and his push pulls being dropped into various calming scenes, such as a suburb, a sunset train ride along the shore. So the productive studio's manager has ever explained the concept, which is to have people to feel warm, and when they gaze at those slow and beautiful scenes with slow moving soundtracks. So the animation are created in looping cycle with soothing instrumental noodling plays on the soundtrack. So this work covers my goal very well. So the things in backgrounds are animated in a subtle way, and animal interactions are subtle, contributing to a slow pace of life. And background soundtracks maintain the whole scene in a slow pace. So while I take it as an example to start my own background motion experiments. And my week one's activity is basically researching. I did a post gathering the styles of background and some elements while a background artist should consider with. This is a kind of like a preparation activity to start my background motion experiment. It pushes me forward to considering the style in my project, and also I pick the elements of space and perspective to carefully consider it later in my project. I choose the line with some color painted art style, but later in my project, but for the illusion of life, I simply just start with black and white and lines. So at the very start, I haven't settled a specific idea of what kind of scene my animation will settle in and what kind of movements were in my background. So I draw some sketches of scene and pick some of the objects to really experiment with it. So in week two, I experiment with some natural motion to try to get a sense of how things in nature move in a slow pace. I pick the object of water, and also I pick the object of the plant. And also I experiment with the bird flying looping cycles. So I experiment with these objects several times to get a sense of how natural things move in a slow pace. And then I bring them into one scene to get a sense of how they support with each other in a slow rhythm in the environment. I also tried the different variations, such as in the scene 2 motion. I'll try different variations in this thing and keep experiment with some natural plants moving during experimenting. But during experimenting, the variations of the water moving is really not working, so I also get back to that object of the water to experiment more with some other variations. And I keep experiment with the week 2's activity until week 3. So through this activity, I gain a basic sense of how natural things move. I also gain some basic technical skills of animating some background objects, and this helped me to create my own background animation in Studio 2 project. In week 3, I experiment with human subtle movements. I also have a play around with with camera movements in Toonboom. It's just a space test referring to week 3's prompt of space, as I think it might be good to have some slow camera movements to guide audience into the space with different perspectives captured for relaxing in my project. So I did space test with camera function in Toonboom, but basically it's just human subtle movements experiment. So I experiment with some people slow talking gestures in a really slow speed, referring to the lecturer's feedback of thinking about posing the characters to suggest their interactions prior to my subtle animation. I did further sketches of some visual human talking poses here, and I applied some pose into my human character and experiment some really subtle talking gestures to try to get a sense of slow moving image. So through this experiment, I realized how important human poses with subtle movements contribute to a living background. And I will take the knowledge to investigate more with subtle, bringing a space to life in my Studio 2 project later on. And referring to week 4's prompt of sound, I actually think about different ambient sound retelling the culture and atmosphere of a space, as sound can make basic visuals seem more complex. And I will keep experimenting with it in next couple of days. So my next plan for next semester for next half of semester is to keep experiment with subtle motion and background object movements, and I will finally come out with a couple of refined animated background scene containing some subtle movements and sound. And this is the end of my presentation. Thanks guys for listening.